Good morning and welcome to Three Swords Gaming. So today I'm going to be talking about getting started on the process of crafting a legendary weapon and how you plan that out and build it into your playstyle. And this comes at the request of someone who was watching me stream the other day and said, "Hey, what does that look like?" And so I told him I'm just going to throw together a video for it versus trying to talk through it on stream. So that's what we're doing right now. Now, what I'm not going to do is actually complete a legendary today. I'm not sure that I'm in a position to do that on my main account, which is the account I'm currently on. And even if I were, it's not something that's like on the table for me right now. I'm not pursuing a legendary at this point in time. So instead, we're just going to kind of talk through the planning process for your first legendary. Like, what are some things you can do to set yourself up for success? The first step that I would say in terms of planning towards a legendary and completing your first legendary weapon would be to select the legendary that you actually want. I would recommend you front load that and actually select that legendary early on. The reason is that's going to facilitate your backwards planning, right? So backwards planning being like a military term for identifying your goal and working back to determine the steps that are going to take you there. And that's going to kind of be central to today's entire conversation. So let's duck out of the game real quick and let's come to the Guild Wars 2 official wiki, because we got all kinds of legendaries here. If you just search legendary weapon, then this is going to bring you to this. And it's going to give you an opportunity to look at different legendaries. And if you click on one, if we click on Quip here, it'll take us to the exact things that we're going to need for that legendary. So that's going to really help us kind of plan out the approach that we're going to take. And they are different. So if we were to say, hey, I want to do a pistol, and we got Quip, we got Hope, and we got the Arene pistol, which is Arene's argument here. If we were to look at that, we would see, hey, different things. Some of the things remain the same, or in some cases different amounts. 38 Mystic Clovers versus 77 Mystic Clovers. All these things are going to go into your calculus, right? So you're probably picking a legendary for one of two reasons. You're probably either wanting to set a goal of achieving kind of one of these end game type things, or you're looking for the flexibility the legendary affords you to change your build on the fly for certain content. If it's the second one, then you're probably going to pick a weapon type and then choose which of the three generations is best for you. If it's the former, then you're going to land on one weapon definitively that you want. And for me, it's always the former. Like, I'm always choosing a legendary based on the legendary itself, not necessarily the weapon type. Because there are some that I think are just really cool and I like them. For example, Exordium is probably going to be the next one that I pursue. Maybe. Might also be Hope. I haven't decided yet. I got to finish Aurora first anyway. So choose your legendary weapon up front so that you can then take a look at what it requires and work backwards from there. And I'm going to talk about why that's so important. Now, there is a possibility that you want to pursue a legendary, but you don't know which one you want. If that is the case, there are plenty of things that you can work on, such as world completion, gift of battle, grinding out the stuff you're going to need for the clovers, buying your icy runestones, because you may choose not to buy them all at once. You might choose to buy, one here, one there, 5 here, 5 there. You're going to need to do some crafting in all likelihood. In fact, all of them are going to require crafting. So these different things that you're going to need to do, you can start working on some of that if you just genuinely know, I want a legendary and I don't know which one. But I really think for the smoothest process, make that decision up front so that your goals are very concrete. So the next thing that you want to do is you actually want to set up your plan, right? The first thing that I would recommend is to set a realistic timeline, right? So when we look at all the things that we need here, some of this is going to take time, and depending on how much you play per week and what your play style is, it could take quite some time. World completion isn't always, so if you're working on like a Gen 1, this could take you several months if you only play a few hours per week. That's fine. I don't know why some people are kind of adamant that you should be able to complete a legendary in a week. Now, if you are already sitting on a lot of gold, a lot of materials, you maybe already have like world completion 90% done, then a week might be a realistic goal. But in all likelihood, a week is not a realistic goal, and probably something closer to anywhere from a couple months to 6 or even 8 months is more realistic, and that's fine. Like, other people shouldn't be defining what your goals are. So set a timeline that allows you to incorporate the things you need into your playstyle, which is really like the other thing that I want to talk about here. So when we look at, let's step back out. Let's look at some of the stuff that we need. If it's a first gen weapon, we need world completion. Based on what your playstyle is, like you can incorporate that in. If you really hate world completion and you're giving yourself 6 months to complete your legendary, then just do like 2%. Let's see what this guy's got. Well, because we're in Wizard's Tower, it's not going to show us. That's disappointing. But let's imagine that he's got 40%, right? If I knock out 2% a day and I'm playing 4 days a week, that's 8% a week. And to get the remaining 60%, I'm 7 weeks away from completing map completion, right? And that's only doing 2% on the map every day, 4 days a week. So by identifying that in advance, that's going to help me set realistic time goals, and it's going to allow me to kind of space that out to where that grind isn't killing me. The same thing would be true of, let's look at some of the other things we need. Obby shards. So there are a number of ways of obtaining these. You might just be using karma to buy them, and in fact, let's take a look at that right now. Let's switch tunes here and go to Straits of Devastation, because this is one of the things that may sneak up on people. And in advance, let's see, is the all right. The temple is open. That's good news. I actually came here earlier today, and it looks like they just finished it. There's a tag sitting here hanging out. So let's grab some obsidian shards right now. This, for me, is the easiest way to do this. It is still my preferred method for obsidian shards.
Eternal vigilance.
Tactician Deathstrider here will give them to me for karma. But it is a lot of karma, right? So let's say we need 30 more to complete whatever legendary we're working on. That's going to push us under 4 million. What a bummer. I'm going to have to farm some karma. Get back up over 4 million. There we go. 30 more obsidian shards. All right, done. Deposit them. Happy times. So if I'm looking at my playstyle and I see that karma is something that I'm going to have plenty of and I can work on easily, then I can go ahead and just say, okay, over a period of time, I'm going to farm enough karma to grab the obby shards that I need. But maybe I also know that I need to farm gold as well. And maybe I've decided that because I enjoy the Silver Waste anyway, I can come to the Silver Waste and I can do Reba to earn gold. Well, I'm naturally going to get some obsidian shards in that process. So now the demand for me to use karma drops because my natural playstyle for earning gold also is going to give me obsidian shards. They're actually about to do the meta event, which presumably that meta event's going to be followed by them running around grabbing a whole bunch of chests, right? So this would be a chance for me to then grab some obsidian in a different way that doesn't require me to expend karma. On the contrary, it'll actually generate karma for me. Wait. Character select. All right, let's actually, we'll go back to this guy for right now, and then we'll come back to something else later. So look at the things that are going to require grind and incorporate those into your playstyle early on so that you're not, so that it doesn't feel like a grind. Another good example of that is if you have a serious aversion to world versus world, then begin on your gift of battle relatively early and just give it like 1 hour a week. And don't look at, don't do that on Friday nights, right? Like the best time to just kind of work on gift of battle and it'll be a little more chill is like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. When like the match is moving towards complete or is already not complete, but is moving towards decided. The earlier in the week you are after reset, the more likely it is that the match is still very close, right? So this match could still go any direction. Fort Aspenwood and Devona's Rest could still catch Boreless Pass and Ferguson's Crossing quite easily with the amount of time we have left. So people are still going to be competitive, and we see there's a queue right now for Eternal Battlegrounds. By Wednesday, there probably won't be a queue in anything because reset's on Friday. So you can easily get into a map, hopefully find a commander, and it's probably going to be less stress. And if you put in 1 hour a week over the course of 4 to 5 weeks, then you should have your gift of battle, and you no longer need to kind of stress over that. So let's transition into the acquisition process for some stuff. Now, when choosing our legendary weapon, the acquisitions process is something that we can incorporate into it because different generations of legendary weapon require different things, right? So here we have a Gen 1 legendary. Obsidian shards, I already kind of talked about that. Gift of exploration, that's just map completion. That's going to be unique to Gen 1 though. So we got a Gen 2 here that doesn't actually require the gift of exploration. It does, however, require doing map completion on the Heart of Thorns maps, but that should be far less time consuming than an entire world completion. So you might look at a Gen 2 for that reason if you really like playing Heart of Thorns content. There's going to be some other areas though where the second gen legendaries will be more punishing. So there's give and take on every one of them. The Arena legendaries, the Gen 3 legendaries, from what I understand, are kind of the most forgiving, kind of the easiest and the cheapest to pursue. There is still some cost there though. Antique Summoning Stones might cost you quite a bit. Jade Runestones, Ambergris is probably going to cost you quite a lot if you're buying it. But some of these things don't have to be purchased. For example, and this is what I'm talking about with acquisition and planning it into your entire process, is if you've decided, hey, I'm going to take 6 months to do this, well, you can acquire several of these per week by going, let's run over there. Let's take a look at that. Who do I got? There we go. So here in Arbitrum, there's a dude who can give us a number of those. And I've actually already acquired one earlier today, so I don't think it's going to show up as an available thing, but we'll take a look at him anyway. Alright, so Lavis here, who's invisible because he hasn't loaded in yet. Come on, Lavis. There you are. Hey, buddy. Oh, look, he's even got a legendary. So I already bought the one for Karma. It's only 7,000 Karma. For something that costs 3 gold on the trading post, 7,000 Karma is like a steal, right? Also, 100 Imperial Favor, also not a bad deal. So now I've got 2 Antique Summoning Stones this week without spending gold in the trading post, whereas in the trading post, it's going to cost me over 3 gold, right? Depending on whether I buy it outright or I put in a buy order, there's going to be a significant cost associated with that. The other costs here, including just buying them directly for gold, all cheaper, right? Cheaper. If I know that up front, when I'm looking at these things, then I can factor that into my decision making. So look at the things that are the hardest to acquire, regardless of the generation you're looking at. Yeah, that was Lavis. See? There are different costs associated with different items, right? Incorporate that in early on. If you're giving yourself 6 months to work on a legendary, then each week, as long as you remember that Lavis is there, you can start working on your Antique Summoning Stones if you're working on a Gen 3 legendary. Or you can start working on doing the meta events that you're going to need for these gifts. And because these are going to require map currencies for the different Heart of Thorns maps, like you can start working on that up front. You can start gathering wood up front so that you're buying less of this. Because there's already going to be some things you have to buy outright. For example, Icy Runestones. Going to have to buy outright, right? There's 100 gold cost up front. So look at the acquisition process for different things. And it's easy. So this is an interesting one because this is actually like one of the worst things for acquisition. Because there's not like easy in-game acquisition for this. Gem store. Achievement chests. So is that what we want? Like to grind out achievement? I actually am really just, there's one item that I think is terrible that is required for a legendary weapon. It is the box fun. So kind of unfortunate that I chose to display a legendary that includes that. But all the rest of this stuff should be able, you can start your dungeon runs early on so you can work on the gift. Look at the things that are going to take the longest and start incorporating those in your playstyle up front. So again, it doesn't become a grind. That is very true with your gold farming and your crafting, because crafting can be kind of a painful process. You can do it in a few hours. You can go from 0 to 400 crafting in a few hours if you have the gold, but it kind of doesn't feel good. For gold farms, there are a number of them that are out there, so really look at your playstyle and ask what complements your playstyle, because odds are you don't just want to do 150 rifts as your farming mechanism unless you really do enjoy rifts. Reba is something that some people enjoy. I don't enjoy that. I would rather use like Dungeons and Fractals, but that's not nearly the most efficient thing. But if you're working over a course of 6 months, then that's fine. You can work on it over 6 months. If you're working on it in 2 weeks, then you're not going to get you're not going to generate several hundred gold necessarily, unless those fractals are like tier 4 fractals, right? Um, Precursors. So I would recommend doing your precursor towards the end. So we're going to switch again. There are a number of different ways of acquiring your precursor. Some of them are more favorable than others, and it's going to depend on the generation of legendary that you're working on. So let's kind of talk through that, because precursor is something people view the precursor as like the number one obstacle to getting a legendary weapon, and I actually think that the precursor is like one of your lesser concerns, especially these days more than ever. So let's look at some of the choices that we have. So recently added is the legendary weapon starter kit in the Wizard's Vault. So with Astral Acclaim, you can see we got some Astral Acclaim here. We could outright get a precursor right now. So if a legendary is one of your goals and you want to knock out like a whole bunch of it early on, this is a fantastic option. Not only is this going to take care of your precursor, but it's also going to give you some other stuff that you need, such as one of the gifts. So for one of the legendary weapons that's available in there right now is Bifrost. You want to know which legendary weapons are in there right now? Look at the current sell price for legendaries, and the ones that are like remarkably cheap compared to the others are the ones that are available right now, because people are crafting them just to sell them, and it's driving the prices down. The fact that Bifrost is the cheapest legendary, that it's 500 gold cheaper than like underwater legendaries, tells you, and it's a very popular one, tells you kind of what this is doing to legendaries and how much easier it's making the process of acquiring them. So not only with Bifrost, Quip is actually another one that's currently in that box. So you will get the Chaos Gun right away, and then you'll also get a gift right away. So that's going to take care of like a huge amount of. I don't think it's one of these gifts. I believe it's one of these two gifts. But you're going to get that right away. So it's going to save you a ton of cost when you talk about like materials. So absolutely, Wizard's Vault, a great way. The only downside of this is right now there are 4 legendaries available in here. Let's see what it is. I think it's 30 days. 36 days. So in 36 days, presumably, the 4 legendaries that are available will change. And I would expect them to still be Gen 1 legendaries. I don't know how they're going to approach Gen 2, because Gen 2 legendaries work a little bit different. But I would expect the next 4 to also be Gen 1. So now more options will become available, because the kit should go into Archive, which there's nothing there, or Legacy rewards, because we don't know, because there's no Legacy rewards yet. So it may still be, that Bifrost will continue to be cheap. I don't know. You could, of course, just get a precursor on drop, but that's, exceptionally uncommon. I don't know what the drop rate is, but it's, remarkably low. In 11 years of gameplay, I've gotten 2 precursors on drop. So don't don't count on that as being a thing. Another thing you can absolutely do, weapons. Pick like a weapon that's probably going to be like, super, or well, if you want a certain precursor, you're going to need to choose that type of weapon. So let's say that I want to work on dagger. Come over here to dagger and choose level 80 exotics. Now you can also do rares. There is the potential to get a precursor from rares, but anecdotally, I think that the rate for that is somewhere around 0.5%, versus if you're using named exotics, the return rate for a precursor in the Mystic Forge is somewhere around 5%, anecdotally. I'm not a scientist, not a statistician, but that has been, I've used the Forge to get precursors several times, and that has been my return rate, generally speaking. And I think the wiki actually has a page on it where they like track data, and I think it ends up being around 5%. So the chances of us actually getting a precursor right now, super, super small. But I just want to demonstrate the process, and maybe we'll get one, and then I'll craft Incinerator soon. Who could say? So we found the cheapest named exotics for the weapon type we want. Where are they? Clearly I'm blind. Did I forget to take them? I forgot to take them. Oh man, this is why we can't have nice things. If you actually remember to take them from the trading post, throw them into the forge, and ideally you'll get something good. Once we've actually done that, then we'll talk about another one, which is you can actually go through a crafting process to craft a precursor through like a collection style series of events and crafting things to lead up to it. There we go. Got something terrible. That's alright. We'll just salvage it. Maybe get some dark matter. Hey, look at that. Sweet, sweet loot. Okay. So if you want to craft a precursor, then the folks you want to talk to are right here. Show me your wares, man. And then choose volume 1 of whatever it is you want to craft. So let's say that we decide we want to craft hope at some point. Why not? I want to craft hope. Right. Now the collection to get started on hope is unlocked. A side note on hope, and one of the reasons I chose pistols here was to specifically discuss this. There are 4 legendary weapons, and they're easy to see here. They're all Gen 2. They don't have the Gifted Desert Mastery. It's like the easiest way to see them if you just want to tell real quick which 4 they are. Astralaria, Hope, Shuka and Chumpawat, and Nevermore are kind of unique in that they have whole adventures built around their acquisition, which makes them a lot of fun, but also a ton of work. So they're generally considered to be 4 of the hardest to get. And I think Nevermore in particular, not only because it has the collection like the other 3, but it also requires the most materials, so it has the highest cost, maybe, of any legendary in the game. So if you're pursuing one of those 4, we can come back and look at... oh, it didn't do it. Come back and look at the collection for Hope. See, like, all these tasks just to complete the first phase. And then we'll include Ascended Crafting as well. So a warning on those 4 weapons. There is additional considerations with those. Another way to get a precursor. Let's go back and talk to our dude in Arborstone again, because he has something else for us, but only if we've completed certain content. Prior to the introduction of End of Dragons, ArenaNet introduced an event of sorts, but it was an event that lasted for an extended period of time. So that was what's commonly referred to as the Return to stuff. I think it's actually called something else, but you'll find it here is from Return to Gates of Maguma all the way through Return to Champions. If you complete all these, with the exception of bonus, if you complete all these, then you will get a little like token thing that you can exchange with Lavis here to get a precursor. So for 105 karma here, I can go ahead and get one of these and immediately get one of the Gen 3 precursors. I haven't done that yet, even though a whole bunch of time has passed, because I don't actually like the Gen 3 legendaries. So not putting in work there. But it is an option for getting a precursor. Finally, for certain generations, Gen 1 and Gen 3, you can actually just buy them. So here is a precursor for, what is it? Arene's Gaze, the legendary focus. We can just buy that precursor outright for 153. Likewise, let's say this is really cheap right now, exceptionally cheap, because it's available for Astral Acclaim. So that's driven the price down like catastrophically. even that, super cheap. I imagine people dropped their sale prices from where it was much higher not that long ago when it became available for Astral Claim. It's almost kind of a bad example. There we go. There's a more realistic example. You can just buy a precursor outright. This, in my opinion, is the worst choice. Odds are, if we just throw named exotic greatswords into the forge, probably we will get Dusk for cheaper than 410 gold. Probably. Statistically speaking, it is likely. It's not guaranteed, however, and that's why people hate the forge, because at the end of the day, it is gambling. Oftentimes, a warning when it comes to the crafting process for precursors, they are more expensive than buying it outright on the trading post or crafting them. So lots of options when it comes to identifying the precursor you want and acquiring that. But I would identify the weapon you want early on, but then wait to acquire the precursor towards the end so that you can dedicate your gold to all these other things. When it comes to the stuff you need, right? So let's say, I just bought the collection for Hope. Let's say that I decide to start working on Hope, right? Look at that. There's 80 gold just in recipes. Gen 2s, man, they're probably the roughest. Although I do consider their map completion to be the easiest because Heart of Thorns maps are more fun than, like End of Dragons maps, at least in my opinion. And these, while you're grinding for this, you're also generating gold. So a note on gold. When farming gold, most of your gold is not going to come from the event itself, like from the, 15 silver, 50 silver, 2 gold, or whatever you get from the event, depending on the event. It's probably going to come from materials. And most people have a habit of just dumping their materials into their material storage immediately without giving it too much thought. And then they forget that they have massive amounts of gold, in the case of my main account here, roughly between 5,300 and 5,700 in gold, just waiting to be liquidated in their storage. So what I would recommend, this is a fantastic, amazing site, guildwars2efficiency.com or gw2efficiency.com. If you're planning to work on a legendary, create an account here. You get your API key off of the official Guild Wars 2 page, log in with your account there, and you just pull an API. It'll create an API key for you, and then you feed it into your Guild Wars 2 efficiency account right here. And there you go. Now you can see all this. And it's going to give you just a ton of useful information. This is only one of many different things that you can look at. So when it comes to understanding your account, like this site is remarkable. But here we can see like all the hidden gold that we have in our account. Some things, like our Furious Scorched Stones here, we're not going to be able to liquidate. But let's say I was working on, Hope, for example, is not going to, this should not require any legendary or any leather at any point in time. If I look through all this, like I shouldn't be seeing leather at any point. So if I just needed to generate gold really, really fast, I have 48 plus 37, that's 85, 108, 110, so on and so forth. So I have, somewhere in the ballpark of like 120 to 130 gold tied up just in leather. If this is your first legendary that you are working on, you might consider liquidating stuff out of your material storage as a mechanism to generate gold to pursue your legendary. After your first legendary, or maybe after your second legendary, maybe you stop doing that because you're a lot more comfortable with the process, you're a lot more comfortable with generating gold, and you no longer want to see materials and your gold reserve just walk away every time you work on something. So like I almost never liquidate anything out of my material storage, though I will fall back on the materials that I already have saved when crafting something. So if I decide to craft Molnir, which is not a legendary, but it is a pretty rare hammerskin, then I will use all 68 of these charged lodestones, and I'll also have to buy a whole mess more. I might convert these charge cores to lodestones as well. I'm not going to give like some kind of masterclass on gold farming because I am not the person to do that. But do look at the gold farming, as I mentioned earlier, and kind of determine what works best for your playstyle. So there's some quick considerations when preparing to pursue a legendary weapon. My final kind of piece of advice on legendaries is alongside the idea of setting realistic goals for timelines and choosing a legendary that complements your playstyle in terms of the acquisition process. And of course, make sure you like the skin as well. Otherwise, why are you doing it? But if you're amenable to several different skins, take a look. Or if you're specifically looking for a weapon type and you don't care about the skins, incorporate it into your playstyle. And then don't panic when things don't go your way, and don't feel the need to grind endlessly, because what's going to happen in either case, with the grinding or the panicking, is it's going to turn you away from the game as a whole, simply because the legendary acquisition process didn't end up being what you wanted it to be. And that's going to be like a real bad feeling. If you incorporate all this into your natural playstyle, whether that's instance content, whether that's open world content, like you can get a legendary weapon um, without having to do a lot of instance content. And if you pursue a Gen 1, you're not going to have to do any instance content at all outside of the original like core dungeons. You're not going to have to do fractals. You're not going to have to do strikes or anything like that. Um, you may have to do some fractals for Gen 2 and Gen 3 to get like your stabilized matrices and stuff like that. Not necessarily have to, but very possibly. Um, just really take your time. Take your time, have a good plan, and play the game as you would with the necessary things incorporated in. And I think you're going to have a pretty easy time when all is said and done working towards your first legendary weapon. The totals that you're going to want in terms of like account type stuff, I would probably say build up a reserve of 400 to 500 gold. And it's going to vary depending on Gen 1, Gen 2, or Gen 3. But let's say 400 to 500 gold, 1 million karma, and at least a couple hundred spirit shards, because at a minimum, regardless of which generation you craft, you're going to need some spirit shards. There's 200, and then if you're crafting Mystic Clovers, another 139. Mystic Clovers, that's one thing I didn't talk about, and I should have. You got a couple options for getting Mystic Clovers as well. You can also get these out of the Wizard's Vault also. I don't like the cost. I would prefer to see that a little bit lower, but they are expensive to craft, so that's probably why the cost is where it is. And that's fine. I haven't done the math on whether it makes more sense to buy gold or to get gold with your Astral Claim and then use that gold to buy the things you need for Mystic Clovers, or to just get the Mystic Clovers outright. Might actually be cheaper just to buy the stuff and forge the Mystic Clovers. That's 10 gold per Mystic Clover. That's pretty high. Your Mystic Clovers realistically should be a touch cheaper than that. But you can get them straight up with Astral Acclaim here. You can get 20 per period. So at 90 days a period, it's going to take you a little bit of time. Another option is reward tracks for both PvP and World vs. World. You can see there's a couple clovers in this one, but if we look at like Bitterfrost, there's a number of clovers at the end of that one. Bajora Marches, Mystic Clovers at the end of that one. So you do have some options in your reward tracks to get Mystic Clovers as well. And then finally, like the original way of getting Mystic Clovers is to just forge stuff. Let's see, you need Ecto. Yeah, well, let's take a look at the wiki, and we'll forge some clovers real quick, just to demonstrate the process. Hurry up, Lines Arch. Loading screens lasting longer and longer these days, even on SSD. Assume it has something to do with the size of the game. Alright. Let's see what we need. We need Mystic Coins, Globs of Ecto, Obby, and then things we buy from Miani, right? So coins, Ecto, shards. Let's grab those.
I know your face from my dream.
Ecto, coins, Obby shards. So do your Mystic Clovers, particularly if you're doing a Gen 1, but really regardless of which generation you're doing. I say particularly Gen 1 because these are all T6, whereas Gen 2, these do not just require T6, they require all the tiers. Same thing here, all the tiers. Gift of Claws, see, all the, or not all the tiers, but multiple tiers. Whereas, again, Gen 1, purely T6. Regardless, a byproduct of failing to craft clovers here, oh, Miami, is going to be
I hope you're here to help.
T6 materials. So, what do you have for sale? Give me some Mystic Crystals.
Thank you.
Was that enough? I don't remember how many it takes. Nope, we need more. Alright, grab 15 more.
Maybe you could show me some moves.
Been so long since I've done this. I should do another legendary. It's been a couple years since I did a legendary. Binding and Meepos was the last one. Okay. Ah, gave us back Obby. I didn't want Obby. There you go. So he gave us T6 leather. So sometimes it's going to be T6 blood, T6 claws, whatever. And thus,
Watch over you.
let's get some Mystic Clovers. I want to see us complete this on one. And thus you're moving closer to your gifts as you do that.
Oh, shine.
See, there's T6 dust. So this is part of the process that like might frustrate you. Same thing with throwing things in the throwing weapons in the forge for the precursor. Trying to get your Mystic Clovers.
Is it just me?
There we go.
Am I
10 Mystic Clovers. Can also be like a painful, frustrating process. So when going through that process, that's when I say don't panic. When you've thrown 150 gold worth of weapons into the forge to get your precursor weapon and you haven't got that weapon yet, that is a bad time to panic. Try not to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of real quick a kind of down and dirty on the process of planning out your legendary weapon. All these things are going to take you time, but it's all the things that you can be thinking about in advance. And you got some of those different options. Again, with like the, you know, if you're giving yourself 6 months, then you can go ahead and start coming in here right now and saying, okay, do I want one of these for? Am I using this to generate gold? Am I going to go ahead and buy my Mystic Clovers here? Do not buy, for the love of God, your Obsidian Shards with Astral Acclaim. Whereas this is like an acceptable cost per clover, and you can see why with us just getting clovers. Although I still don't think we put 10 gold worth of materials into that Mystic Forge, but maybe we did. And we got 10 of them back too, so did we put 600? Do we put 100 gold worth of mats into that forge? Absolutely not. Probably still cheaper to buy the things and throw them in, but you're going to consume your karma on a hobby. Don't do this. There is no way that one obsidian shard is worth 8 gold. There's no way that one obsidian shard is worth almost 2 gold, even at this exchange rate. When you look at the Mystic coins here, like, that math does not add up at all. So please don't use that acquisition method for Obby. But anyway, all right, I've kind of rambled a little bit. This went quite a bit longer than I wanted, but hopefully it kind of sets the stage for how one might go about prepping to pursue a legendary weapon. So thank you for listening to me ramble for a bit, and I hope you have a good afternoon.